streaming, and we're going to finish off conspiracy theories. If you could write, you don't have to draw the pictures, obviously, but we're finishing up the areas of what arguments aren't. Arguments and persuasion. Yeah, not all of these are argument. Yeah, as we're just getting beyond Christmas, what would this Santa look like? What would the person who made this picture be trying to communicate? Yeah, gee.
No, it's the knockoff. And it's also a knockoff of the recruitment. British World War One. I want you.
Yeah, I want you. So it's got recruitment in there. It's echoing some older themes with that. It's also got Santa. I want you to spend a lot to prove you love your family. What are they? What message are they trying to send?
Spend a lot.
Right?
Yes, and basically it's like, I want you to waste a lot of your money to prove something that you don't need to prove.
Right. So they're not. Are they trying to get you to spend a lot of money?
No.
No. This is some sort of commentary on Christmas. No, this one of the famous photos that I've heard it before that people have said that Santa Claus was invented by Coca-Cola, and particularly the white beard, red suit version of Santa Claus. It wasn't. It did make it vastly more popular, but the red suited Santa Claus, it predates Coca-Cola. But they did make this version very popular and probably the dominant version. With this ad campaign.
Like Scandinavian.
There's a lot of. The problem with Santa Claus is if you go looking for mythology, December 24th is really near the solstice, and there's a lot of solstice celebrations around the world that have a variety of folklore that gets folded into various myths and legends. And so you can start looking for similarities and find Santa Claus everywhere. It does, in a way, predate Christianity in terms of the gift-giving celebrations that was then attributed to St. Nicholas. The putting up of holly and fir trees inside your house goes back to Saturnalia. But on the other hand, you could also view them as different celebrations. A lot of people, depends what you're looking for, and of course, cultures borrow from other cultures. But obviously, what is this version of Santa Claus trying to do? What are you supposed to feel? Thirsty? What feelings does that give you? Well, I mean, that's their goal is that you want to drink that. But what feelings is that picture supposed to give you? Yeah. Warm, happy nostalgia. You remember when we watched that film in which the people held up the van full of banknotes? And he had an advertising thing called anchoring, in which you show people doing something fun or sexy or whatever feeling you want to introduce, show, and then the name of the product they want you to buy, and that way they anchor that feeling with that product. This was an incredibly successful ad campaign. It increased the amount of Coca-Cola sold, and did an excellent job of that. It wasn't quite as successful as their mistake campaign, but it's up there. A lot of things we have now are the result of old ad campaigns. You're supposed to spend about 10% of your income on a diamond if you are male and you're proposing to someone to get married. That value was an ad campaign by De Beers. The fact you give a diamond at all is an ad campaign by De Beers. And that just sort of stuck around. At one point, nobody gave diamonds for wedding rings. They gave gold bands. That was it. The idea that you had to have a diamond engagement ring was something that De Beers did. Show wedding, show people in love, show De Beers. Diamonds are forever. Connect that enough and it goes into the popular culture, and then your advertising takes care of itself. These are not arguments because there's no premise and there's no conclusion. It's just feelings associated with another feeling. And so pictures cannot be arguments unless they include some sort of premise and conclusion that you can put up. Often they want to make you assume a premise or assume a conclusion, but they rely on you doing the work for them. Like this one that came out during the beginning of COVID, with social distancing is communism. And when I saw that, I'm like, I have seen this picture before. It is a very common thing, particularly in US media, to take anything you don't like and make it equal to communism, because communism is bad. And then I found this while I was doing that, and I think I might agree with that one. Salad is communism. I don't like salad. Salad is communism. Yeah. Salad is communism. So, what's not communism? Chicken stuff. No, I feel if you don't like chicken, you could say that chicken is communism. A political theory derived by Karl Marx in which we seize a means of production and allow more egalitarian wealth distribution amongst the working class isn't really a health measure like social distancing. But they're doing much the same thing. Something I don't like. Communism, something I don't like. Communism, I don't like. Associated with something else I don't like. So that we can give those feelings. If you are watching a TikTok political ad, Instagram reel, and you are getting a lot of emotions, it's always good to figure out why they are giving you those emotions, because emotions often take the place of thinking in the moment. You should have an emotion about an argument. There are good arguments and there are bad arguments. There are convincing and unconvincing. But if you just have the emotion, it might be that they're trying to convince you without an argument. Probably. It seems a very Florida thing, but I also don't want to put down the reason we have the mental picture of Florida man or Florida woman is because Florida has extremely transparent reporting laws. So if you're arrested in Florida for any reason, the police have to give the details. So if anything happened elsewhere in the world, they don't have to report it. You can't find it out. But because you can find it out in Florida, then if anything bad happens in Florida, the rest of the world knows. They can just look it up. And often people get arrested for very entertaining reasons. Whereas in BC doesn't have that law. So we don't have that BC man or BC woman type trope, because if somebody gets arrested for really dumb reasons in BC, that's a secret. You actually have to go to the courthouse, listen to the charges, write it up as a newspaper. That's work. Whereas in Florida, you can just search it. They have the databases online. You can just search for entertaining things. And there are people who get paid in newspapers, well, not newspapers anymore, for social media sites that just go through. What are all the things that were reported today in Florida? Oh, that one's funny. Let's make that a news story. Florida is actually really good because they're transparent. It's like the opposite of communism. If communism is bad. Okay. Some more. Just a reminder, and I find this media literacy to be improving over time. But obviously, a good reminder: if you see a picture, you always have to question the perspective and how that picture was taken. So this is a picture from one perspective during COVID, and this is the exact same picture from another perspective. So if you wanted to write a story on how the people in your town weren't social distancing and why this was bad, you'd go with that picture. If you wanted to write a tell you how well your populace responded to the distancing and how well they're handling it, you would go with this picture. But they're the same people. This person and these people are the same people. It's the exact same lineup. When I was in high school, I played a sport called paintball. And the Campbell River Times Tribune, I can't remember the name of the newspaper, came to the paintball club and said, hey, can we take pictures while you're playing? And we're all like, yeah, that's awesome. We signed releases. And then while we're playing, the photographer the reporter wasn't there, just the photographer, took pictures. We even posed. So we get up in our camo and we pose like this, aiming at the camera, and did a bunch of stuff. 2 weeks later, article comes out. Paintball is similar to the training of death squads in South America. And went on and how the youth of today was being trained in paintball, and this could be used by the government to train death squads, and this was a really bad thing, and just smeared paintball as a sport. And all of us were like, oh my God, like our faces were in the paper. We signed releases saying that they were allowed to use the pictures. Nothing we could do. You don't have any control over what a paper writes once those pictures are on there. No, I just was really quiet about it. I didn't tell my parents. My picture itself, you couldn't make out it was me because I was wearing a paintball mask. But there's a couple people in which you could. A tiny little Campbell River paper from 30 years ago. Probably not, but I'll see. I've never tried to look for it before, but it'd be from like 35 years ago. No. There's lots of things I didn't tell them. I made nitrogen glycerin when I was a kid. There's a lot of things parents don't need to know. Similar. Oh, but the first is taken with a. This first picture is taken with a telephoto lens from far away. Second with a wide angle lens from the side. These are the same. So there's those two people. They look really close together. This is like during COVID. Look at all these people mingling. This is a hot spot. What's going on? Oh, look. They're in their group. They're talking. They're well placed from the other people. They're maintaining more than the 6 feet. They're obeying the guidelines. Which story you want to tell just depends on which picture you have. And now with the newest AI offerings, where you can take a picture of somebody and then make it look like anybody else. You want to see the Terminator acted out by your favorite comedian? That is going to be possible. Microsoft recently came out with an add-on for podcasters and YouTubers that have video that just with a few minutes of recording your face, it will put a filter on top so that your eyes always look like they're looking at the camera. So you can be reading your notes, but your eyes are always looking at the camera. 10 seconds of recording, and it will mimic your voice. And so you can actually have a computer voice reading words you've never said that sounds like you. Last week, there was a warning about a scam in which scammers were taking clips from people online, getting AI to learn their voice, then calling their grandparents and saying, I'm stuck in a South American jail, wire me $21,000. And it was successful. These are people who have had this happen to them. So we are going beyond just taking pictures with different lens, active manipulation. With Photoshop, it's been possible, but the speed at which it can be done is now amazingly fast. I have to see it to believe it, but now I have to see it in person while I'm there, and even then I might question it. It's starting to become a little bit more realistic. Another one. All these were taken by a photographer to show how they would set up different situations depending on the story they wanted to tell. So, some good reminders. Relevance and rhetoric, if you could write that down. Don Cherry was once a Canadian icon. Eventually, he grew even too toxic for the CBC, and they fired him. CTV hired him for a while because they allow slightly more toxic people, but even then they fired him. He would make commentary on hockey games, wear very loud suits. He was very bombastic, funny, entertaining. Um, and he got a contract to advertise Cold FX. Their advertising slogan was all Canadian, all natural, and it works. It's just ginseng powder. Um, and they still sell it. They branched out. I don't think it's quite. How many of you have seen Cold FX in the store? I've seen it when I've looked for it, but it doesn't seem to have as big as displays anymore. I don't think they're doing quite as well. What's the newest one for curing your cold? The one I saw last time with COVID, um, one of my children had an ear infection. We got antibiotics, but they also wanted drops of antibiotics in it. You could buy them over the counter. You didn't have to have a prescription. The stores, because of course, everybody's sick, were all sold out. So we're going from store to store looking for it. One of the things that I found is that I had the name and picture of the medication. It was sold out, but right next to it was almost identical packaging made by the same company. But instead of being that compound, it was a homeopathic version of it. If you're not aware, homeopathic is just pure water. There's no medicinal quality to it whatsoever. But they're now selling those side by side. What is it trying to appeal to? All Canadian, all natural, and it works. What's the rhetoric in that? Okay, yes.
There's a sort of stigma based and all around the world in essence to products made in other countries that are mass produced. So this is like it was made here in Canada using natural ingredients. And it works.
And it works. We've done the naturalist fallacy yet, Beaver Dabs. So we've got the all natural in there. And they did, by the way, Cold Effects, the reason I like to use them, they did have, they used to proudly display, I think, until they were told it was illegal to, that it was scientifically proven. The company that proved it was a wholly owned subsidiary of Cold Effects. So it wasn't an independent, outside, objective person. And their own results showed that you would have to take Cold Effects every day for the entire year. And the dosage was about 8 pills a day, which would have cost you, I think, about $75 a day or something, because there's not that, it was expensive and there's not a lot of pills per bottle. And if you took that amount per day every day for an entire year, it would prevent, not cure, prevent 1/4 of one cold. A lot of money just for a couple of days of colds. And of course, we have the last one to appeal, even if you don't know who Don Cherry is. I've explained. Famous personality. I like the ones that get actors who play doctors on TV, and then they're advertising medicinal products, because they know people get confused by people who are doctors on TV versus people who are actually doctors. It's new, it's blue. So, part to write down, rhetoric, definition, language that has psychological force but carries no logical weight. So when you say someone is speaking rhetoric, what you're saying is that they don't have a logical argument there, but they are saying things that feel like it's correct. Hmm. Next one, lists of facts. Interesting fact. Did you know that Mark Zuckerberg's real name is Jacob Greenberg? And he is the grandson of David Rockefeller. Zuckerberg in German means sugar mountain. Their clandestine word for Facebook. No doubt a mountain of information from which they can extract billions. The Rothschilds own nearly 10% of all Facebook shares. Facebook was funded with $500 million US from a CIA-owned bank. All of this is not a secret. Do you still think Facebook was created by a bored, no-name college student?
Well, that's what we're saying. We don't want anybody to know.
Well, the thing about this is the list of facts methods for conspiracy theories. Number one, not all these things are true. Number two, they don't actually make any premise to conclusion connections. They're relying on you to take in that secrecy and go, oh, they're probably doing this for nefarious purposes, and come up with something on your own. If they can get you to come up with your own conclusions from a list of facts, you're more likely to believe it. It's a rhetorical technique. Facebook was created by DARPA to track a person's entire existence. Similar one where they list a bunch of facts in terms of lifelong project there was killed on the same day they noticed that Facebook was founded, and they're making the thing that, hey, these two things are related. Lists of facts. This was advertised to me because they thought I was someone who owns a blog and would be interested in advertising on TikTok. And all they did was, boom, here's a list of facts. They're trying to convince me TikTok is an untapped market. Now, they don't ever say that. And more importantly, they don't actually really tell me what sort of payback I'll get from that. They're just telling me that, like, hey, here's all these really, really interesting facts about TikTok. Maybe you should get in there and start paying us money to advertise on there. This is one I took from Conspiracy Theory. Wuhan was the very first city in China to get 5G. 5G has a negative influence on the immune system. There is no 5G in Africa, and there is no virus in Africa. Viruses are the byproduct of a cell that has been poisoned. 5G is a radical and entirely new type of technology. It's been used in the military and the battlefield, and it's now being deployed, which is a military term, into the civilian realm. The 1918 Spanish flu pandemic coincided with the worldwide introduction of radio. The Boston Health Department tried to experiment with the 1918 flu virus by purposely infecting healthy people with the mucus of infected patients, and the healthy people didn't get sick. What is this list of facts trying to convince us of? Anybody have any problems with this list of facts? Yeah.
Like, it's trying to convince us that all these new technologies that come out that also just so happen to coincide with these new viruses as well, it's obviously a government cover-up or something to like get it out there, get it mass spread.
Government has introduced something to start, I don't know, reducing the population. Yes?
I was gonna say, like, like the same thing as Ryan, but also the part where there's like no viruses in Africa. Like I can't.
There is virus in Africa. In fact, if you read the news, part of the worldwide problems is the difficulty they have had in convincing other countries to share the vaccines. Countries like Canada and the US often hoard vaccines, and they go out of date where we could have used them in other places. There is also 5G in Africa. So a lot of these facts, when you have a list of facts, they're not even true. They're relying on your bias to assume that they're true. So if there's someone who doesn't think there's that much technology in Africa because they have a bias against Africa, then they might go, oh, that just simply must be true. Also, viruses are the byproduct of a cell that's been poisoned is biologically makes very little sense. None of these facts, I would hesitate to say none of them are true. I can interpret them in a way that was true. But even if it was true, if Wuhan was the first city in China to get 5G, that may have absolutely nothing to do with the virus.
Another thing is that 5G was deployed on the civilian realm.
Yeah.
It's like, how many other inventions made for the military just so happen to get widespread use by the public? Internet was originally made by the U.S. military. Computers used by government facilities, sometimes it's small enough that the population could get used to it, and so much more.
Yeah, one of the big ones.
Sorry?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So I think you've just convinced me that the internet probably corresponded with a worldwide epidemic of some sort. They probably should also be suspicious.
There wasn't one, unless they've covered it all up.
They've covered all that up as well. So, one to add to your list, lists of facts are not arguments. Have no conclusion. They often are trying to give an emotional reason or just reasons for the reader to jump to their own conclusion. And by jump, I mean because there's no evidence there. You're just jumping to a conclusion. And they usually make it fairly obvious. But as a psychological way, particularly for advertising, advertisers know this. If they can provide you with enough things that you will conclude independent, you will feel much better about that conclusion. So lists of facts are considered rhetoric. They're not, unless the person has laid out why one proves the other or supports the other, depending on if you're talking about inductive or deductive. Lists of facts, be really wary about those. You see them in a lot of conspiracy theories. There is no actual conclusion. They're relying on you to make the conclusion for them. Now, there is one that we did a while ago, just as a reminder. So here's all the things that are not arguments that we've done. Pictures, movies, toadstools, gas. Unless they actually have a premise and conclusion, it's not an argument. We also did if-then statements, but we did them a while ago. What can if-then statements be instead of an argument? Or because statements. An explanation. So these can be explanations. And if-then statements, if this, then that, aren't themselves an argument. They're either they could be just telling you consequences if you do something. They haven't said that one is supporting the other. They are trying to imply a connection, and more often that's an explanation as well. So explanations are not conclusions. Sometimes it can be a bit difficult to tease those apart. And where this, I think, really makes a difference between when we're looking at arguments and other things is in the areas, there's another course out there that's very, very similar to this course. It's called debate. Debate we'll talk about, and law. We'll talk about argument all the time. But what is the goal of debate? To win. Convince the other side. Do you have to speak the truth in debate? No, we just have to not get caught. You use a lot of rhetoric, and it is really important to know that good rhetoric is important. If you are trying to convince someone of the truth and you don't have good rhetoric, they're not going to believe you. So you do have to be good at that. But you can be good at that and have no truth. So if you want to learn how to convince people, probably debate. If you want to know the truth, you want to be good at argument. It would be ideal to be good sort of at both. How many of you heard of ethos, pathos, and logos? I think that's taught in English. Okay. What is ethos then? Credibility. Pathos, emotion, and logos, logic. So we're concerning ourselves basically with just this section. And be aware of that if you want to write something, you should probably include the other two sections as well. What's this? I think this was one just, no, that's not very good.
None of those on the Frappuccino or in the public. This is swipe through to tap in classic in the public.
Oh yeah, that's a good history of it. Goes through the hierarchy of needs. I like this one better. It's a bit older. It's a crash course of 4 years. Talking about propaganda. All propaganda. Oh, there we go.
Let's play a little game of Name That Tune. I'm going to start singing a tune, and I want you to see if you can finish it.
Nope. Because I'm about to get copyright